Get ready, this one's called Try and Sue Us After Screwing Up, Get Fired Instead. When my second year of university rolled around, I was living with 3 other friends in a property that we rented through a letting agency, which had a ridiculous pun for a name, but go off, and the house was initially perfectly fine. We moved in at the beginning of August and had no problems for a while. When they asked early on whether we wanted to sign a contract for next year, we said sure, and signed a new contract in November due to start the next academic year. We know this was a screw-up in hindsight, but we really didn't think we'd have serious issues. However, when it started getting colder in the winter months after a mild autumn, we realized that our boiler was absolutely god-awful. It would fail about once a week, barely heat the radiators, and wouldn't heat rooms, and would need repressurizing each time it died. Being students and not too wise about renting, we just put up with this at first, dutifully emailing the agents every time it broke and waited for them to send someone out. In the meantime, the busted boiler meant that the hot water was dodgy, sometimes cutting out, and that the house was freezing. And, as such, the monthly utility bills were through the roof. One was almost 1.5 times that month's rent. Since the boiler was essentially now a very expensive kettle and we needed office heaters on almost constantly so we didn't get frostbite. We could constantly see our breath and practically needed to be fully dressed to sleep. This caused issues. Constant colds for one guy, mold growing in the bathroom since we didn't ventilate well as to not lose the little heat the house did retain, and being able to dry our clothes. We didn't have a tumble dryer, just a clothes horse. We were fed up and decided that we wanted out of this new contract. Because we went through an agency, we had no direct contact with the landlord. Every query and contact was through the agents. This is important to remember for later. The agents, while very polite over the phone and in person, were flaky and bad at fixing problems, and it took months for them to send a gas man over. And even then, it was just to renew safety certs, and he didn't even do his job right. So a couple of weeks later, another guy was called out when it broke again. The landlord even comes for this visit just to make sure there's no more screw-ups, and this is our first time meeting her. She was a bit of a soccer mom type, but she seemed to be sorting it, and the issue was kind of fixed, as well as an ancient boiler that really needed replacing could be fixed. This was the last time that we talked to them directly. Through the whole process, my parents had been helping us document things. My mom being a solicitor and my dad a landlord himself, so they knew their stuff. They were grumbling about the agents from the start, but for us, it was easier to just put up with most of the BS since the university work was stressful enough without all of this. Taking the offhand advice given to us by the agents at the beginning of the tenancy, we kept great records and pictures of every document, email, and letters that we received, and took pictures of problems and work being carried out for record keeping. We eventually figured that they'd try and shaft us in some form sooner or later, so evidence was needed. We emailed them over the break officially saying that we wanted out of next year's tenancy. They were amicable and said that if we could get someone else to take it, sure, but were very adamant that if we didn't, we had to keep paying rent for that contract. We have house viewings and we advertise for months, but we get nowhere. At this point, tensions are rising and my mom has taken our challenge as a personal hobby to sort out legally. Since we had initially tried to be low-maintenance tenants and deal with small issues, our contract stated that any issues related to the property needed to be sorted by the landlords or the agents, just in case that we caused further damage trying to do repairs. We instead decided to do exactly what our contract said. We emailed them constantly about every tiny issue that we had, from a broken light bulb to a frosty letter flap. We knew our contracts, front to back, the local laws around renting, and asked the university about student renting for specific detail. Getting permission to change a light bulb became a bit of an inside joke to us at this point. Hey, how many working days is it going to take to change it this time? 3 to 5, it's Friday night. We then made sure that we complied with every single thing that they asked us to do in order to leave this new contract, like advertise, accommodate all viewings, keep them updated about anyone who was interested, and so on. We went above and beyond trying to get some poor suckers to take this house off of our hands. We emailed constantly through this for a paper trail, and we made sure that we could document this entire thing. It was stressful, but my parents assured us that things would work out, and knowing that we were annoying them as much as they annoyed us helped. When we move out at the end of the first tenancy and hand our keys in with explicit letters saying that we were not returning for the next contract, we waited for crap to hit the fan. A few weeks later, while I'm on holiday, we all get emails forwarded from the landlord via the agents saying that unless we immediately found new tenants or agreed to stay on, they'd sue us. Scare tactics pretty much. This was also the first time that we'd had an email directly forwarded from the landlord, since usually the agents just passed on any info and so on in their own words. The landlord said they'd had no notification saying that we wanted out of the new tenancy, that this was out of the blue, and therefore they weren't able to advertise for new tenants. So we dutifully sent them a large email with screenshots and pictures of email notifications of house viewings, emails about potential takers, the original emails about us not wanting to take the contract with the date 6 months beforehand clearly highlighted. And then we waited. After a quiet period, we got an almost sullen-sounding email saying that they would drop it if we paid 4 months' rent from the new contract, since although there was an error in communication, we still did not fulfill our end and provide replacement tenants. So out rolls another long email with photos of everything the agents had screwed up, including the dodgy gas man visit. Came to learn what he did was illegal and potentially dangerous, and it was the agent's job to make sure he did his job right. The fact that the new contract signing was botched in the first place due to the agent's error, and one of our housemates had bought a laser thermometer to document how cold the rooms were, sometimes as low as 8 Celsius or 45 Fahrenheit. And had taken pictures of readings, so there was a heavy implication that the house was not suitable for habitation during that time. We haven't received a single email since that, and when the bus goes past the house recently, I see that the letting sign has been changed to a different company, and the house is no longer available through the original agency. So they got fired by the landlords for screwing up so much. I feel smug every time I go past. Is this not just textbook malicious compliance? You gotta do what we say? Okay, we're going to do it, and we win in the end. What would have you done? You want me to stay in my lane? You got it, boss. Posted by Original Tank 5357. Some time ago, I used to work in a medical specialty office. It was ID, or infectious disease, as a medical assistant. Sidebar, I used to work in the food industry and was always told that I wouldn't ever contribute to society or do anything meaningful with my life. While I absolutely loved working as a chef and a baker at the time, I wanted to do more with my life, and I wanted to prove to myself that I'm not as useless as people made me out to be. Not that I believe that for 1 second, but in my culture, if you aren't a businessman or a doctor, you're lower than everyone else. It's pretty terrible, but that's how the culture is. I now live in the US, and it's been pretty good. Back to the story. I had graduated top 3 in my class and was certified through the AAMA and scored in the 90th percentile, so I knew my stuff. But I've never worked a white-collar job in my life, so I was afraid that I would seem, well, out of place. I did my externship at this ID clinic in my town, and they loved my interpersonal skills. They loved my work and stated that I would be offered a job at the end of my externship. I was elated. I was just so happy to have a job secured and to have a foot in the door to the medical field. It turns out my blue-collar experience had helped me relate with a lot of our patients, and they appreciated my work more for it. As my time went on, my experience working in the medical field became less about the money and more about the people that I can help with my direct patient care. They weren't just charts, MRNs, medical record number for those non-medical folk, and diagnoses. They were Jeff, who ran the local farmers market, or Meg, who worked with kids at the Y. I cared for my patients, and our repeats would always look forward to coming back to see me and have a chat. I loved working with my patients. So at the end of my externship, I was extended an offer of employment for a decent amount of money. It was more than my other classmates were offered at their practices, but still not a whole lot. And I took it. I was to be the medical assistant in charge of direct patient care. This meant checking in, rooming, dealing with prescriptions, performing and searching for labs, packing wounds, and doing dressing changes. Being officially part of the office now, I was determined to work my butt off and show myself and my colleagues that I could do it. I continued to do my work and care for patients. However, over time, I would notice certain things that weren't in my job duties that I could do that would help care for the patients. Certain things like calling their doctors for updated orders or checking for records from local hospitals. Also, helping patients find good home health or SNFs, which are skilled nursing facilities. It's generally, though, the medical scheduler's job. This also included looking into insurance coverage or billing and checking referral statuses for referral coordinators, among other things. Doing these tasks meant a bit more work on my end, but it also meant the best care that I could offer for my patients. This went on for a year, and my patients were happy and willing to come to appointments. Apparently, not a whole lot of people like to come to a building that has the words "infectious diseases" in big print on its side. Then one day, out of the blue, I'm called into my supervisor. Young, naive me thought, oh great, they finally see how hard I'm working and I'm finally getting recognized. Maybe they'll promote me to lead. Nope. My boss, Shelly, told me that I'm working too hard and sticking my fingers into too many pots. I asked where this was coming from, and she stated that I was staying more than 5 minutes late too many times, and it's because I'm doing too much work. She said, "We can't keep paying you all this overtime." I think I was maybe making 30 minutes of OT at most. She said that's still too much. I'm doing too much work. I was baffled, absolutely stunned. I thought I was doing the practice of service, but she undermined the entirety of the last year's hard work that I put in. I was frustrated and I was a bit upset, but I tried my best to remain professional. So I asked her what she would like me to do, and the next words out of her mouth were ones that she would come to regret. "Well, I see you're doing a lot of tasks that are meant for other positions. Maybe you should stop doing those and just stay in your lane." She then proceeded to write me up for trying to abuse the time clock. Insert a Jim Carrey, alrighty then, and cue malicious compliance. I asked her to send me a list of exactly what my job duties are, which she was happy to do. It listed most of what I originally was meant to do, except it didn't include dressing changes and packing wounds. I saw this and immediately knew this would be trouble for my boss. You see, she was the only other medical assistant on our end of the office that was certified to deal with minor wound care and dressings. At that point, since I was the main contact for patients, that would fall onto her plate. So I told each of my patients that I won't be doing any of that extra work because it goes against the practice's wishes, and I was told not to. All of them understood, but it's tough to get patients to keep appointments when things are delayed. Not long after the order was issued, I got my first page for a wound pack. Excellent. One thing to note about my boss is that she absolutely abhors feet. And one thing to note about infectious disease clinics is that we dealt with a lot of diabetic foot infections, at least 2 or 3 a day. Doc wants to see how it's healing, so he removes the wrap and unpacks the foot. Spent a little extra time with the patient and now has to get to his next appointment. I'm paged by the doc to pack the foot, wet to dry. "No problem, doc. Let me get Shelly for you." He then gives me a kind of odd look, but continues to his next appointment. Shelly gloves up, and as soon as she passes the threshold of the room and notices it's a diabetic foot, she's holding back her gags and immediately sweating. I pass by the room, and she asks for my help. As calmly as I could, I turned and said, "Sorry, boss, packing wounds isn't on my list. I can't do it, just staying in my lane. By the way, the 2 o'clock N3 is a through and through foot infection. Probably should get that packed soon too." I'm glad we were wearing masks because she couldn't see the massive crap-eating grin that I had on my face throughout that whole encounter. She tried to write me up about disobeying superiors, but I'd spoken with my GM and she was behind me. Instead, she ended up getting written up for trying to put wound packs back on my list after she told me I did too much work. She ended up having to do part of the medical scheduler's job, part of the referral coordinator's job, and part of the billing office's job as she let go one of our front desk staff because there was not enough work to go around. There was plenty of work. I was doing it. She didn't last long after that. The burnout got to her and she stepped down from her supervisor position 4 months after that. They ended up hiring another super, and I left the practice shortly after that I got the vid. They told me to come back into work after 3 days, and still very symptomatic, so I told them I wouldn't endanger my patients like that and to shove it. Last I heard, they have an entirely new front office staff and they're perpetually short-handed. Shoulda let me drive my own path instead of staying in your silly lanes. Stop bothering us with that deadline. We've got this. Sure thing, kids. Posted by Rare Cheesecake 9701. Some background. I, 27 female, work in IT. I'm a well-respected and known member of the IT party circle where I live, so to speak. I am not jaw-dropping, but people know me and I have a very good reputation. One of the things is that I got to the point in my career when I wanted to give back, so I started mentoring others. Mostly, I mentored adults or those who were closer to me in age. Career advice, how to apply for different exchange programs that can boost their professional growth and improve their speaking and writing skills. The usual. But I always was one up for the challenge, and I decided to try and mentor kids. It's not a secret that IT and STEM are increasingly popular right now, and more people want to get into the field. Therefore, there are myriads of boot camps, hackathons, and mentoring programs for all ages. So, I signed up for one such program as a mentor. Teach kids how to code with blocks, tell them what AI is, and how to develop an MVP. It sounds more complicated than it might look at first glance, especially when you're an educated professional with a degree, explaining concepts that are rather complicated to children who may have less than 1/50th of your tech knowledge. I must add that participation in the said program gives kids credits and can help them get into better schools or even be eligible for some university scholarships later in life. So only pros, if you ask me. The only thing is that they must upload their MVP project to the site before the deadline. I was assigned 2 teams. Primary, which is early middle schoolers, Team A, and high schoolers, which is Team B. Both had 5 members, and the youngest in Team A was 8 years old. I thought, oh my goodness, that will be tough, thinking about Team A and how I am up for a tough time. Also, since they are so young, the parents of the kids must observe Team A meetings and my lessons, and parents equals problems. Ironically, despite my worries, even with help from the parents, the kids in Team A were doing great. But the same can't be said about Team B. A little side note, with my mentees, I have 2 rules. 1, at least 1 meeting per week. At least 50% of the group must be present. 2, communication. When I type something, like task to do or reply to a question asked before, I ask my mentees to respond. Not even text, a thumbs up emoji will also suffice. We all know that red status doesn't mean much when you can accidentally open an app for a second or swipe it to clear RAM on the phone. So, Team A attended all the meetings and responded to my assignments. There was a curriculum provided by a program to follow, and they were very receptive overall. Team B started okay, but then started not showing on meetings and leaving assignments read but unresponded. I understand they have a lot on their plate, exams are no joke, but they disregarded my time, which I will not be okay with. I have a job to do, and mentoring in that program was 100% volunteering, and there was no payment for the mentors. There was, however, a very strict deadline. The middle of April, when their MVPs must be loaded onto the website for later judgment. I, even when ticked, am a professional first and an angry lady second. So I wrote multiple messages asking for updates on the project, with warnings at the end that deadline is April 15th, don't miss it. After one such message, the so-called leader of Team B, Sam, wrote to me this. Hi OP, I know that you probably mean well, but you only bother the team with those deadline messages. Can't you, chill out? When we need you, we'll contact you and all. Just get off our hair and, let us do our job. I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings. It is what it is, heart. After I read that message, I was like, what the heck? But I did respond that I would stop messaging if that caused tension within the team. Though the deadline is still on the 15th and the site would reject any application that was uploaded after. Just stop, okay? Jeez, said Sam to that, so I decided, okay, I'm washing my hands out of this. Cue malicious compliance. Since that message, I haven't written anything to Team B. I had scheduled no meetings, updates, or checkups about the curriculum and their understanding, and definitely not a written reminder of the deadline once. Deadline came. Team A uploaded their project with no issues, and their parents even bought me a nice box of chocolate as a thank you gesture. Just like the deadline came and went, Team B started bombarding chat, asking me to help because something is wrong with the site. We can't upload our project. I entered the chat and said, yes, it will not upload. No, it's not an issue with the site. The deadline has passed, so if you try to upload, it will only show you an error message. I warned you, kids. No extra credits, no nothing. The rules of that program are simple, but they are hard, no exceptions ones. Team B tried to blame me, saying that as a mentor, it was my job to ensure that they would succeed. And I reminded them that my job as a mentor is to provide support and guidance, keep track of their progress, and to remind them of the deadline, which, all of the above, they, via Sam, asked me not to. And since I respected their boundaries, I did exactly what they had requested. They can sulk as much as they want. I have all our communication in writing, so they don't have a leg to stand on when trying to accuse me of sabotaging them and their program. Tough luck, kids. Boss fires me, but he doesn't know that I own the patents. Click the video on your screen so you hear of the justice that happens, and I'll see you there.